I'm Ninma Ash, Rachel Smith at New Media Consortium, and I'm here to introduce Jared Pixel, also known as Jared Bendis. Jared is the Creative Director of New Media for Case Western Reserve University and the Virtual Reality Specialist for the Cleveland Museum of Art. As Creative Director of... Oh, you were?
Yeah, I forgot to take that off.
You need to update your bio. As Creative Director of New Media, he serves as the Senior Media Expert for the campus. He develops digital media strategies for media creation and use. He researches and develops new media applications for education. And he represents the Friedman Center in the press and in industry. And Jared is going to take us on an exciting, enlightening, and entertaining ride called Digital Tattoos, Digital Hoarding, and Social Turning Gold into Lead. Take it away, Jared.
Hey, everybody. Hi. It's actually Digital Tattoos, Digital Hoarding, and Social Networks Turning Gold into Lead. And I think at some point my slides may come up in the middle at some point through the middle section. So if we have a little transition, bear with me. All right. Thank you. So before we begin, I want to start off by giving you one very big grain of salt. There's a grain of pepper there as well, but I want to make sure that everybody realizes here that this is just a whole bunch of opinions and rants and stuff that's based on my experience and some of the things that I think we need to be looking at. I will be doing things a little differently than I have normally where I've done one of these sort of rants. I'm actually going to talk about some projects that I'm working on along the way. In my abstract, I actually asked, are we going to heaven in a wheelbarrow or hell in a handbasket? And I just love the expression hell in a handbasket. And I'd only recently come across the term heaven in a wheelbarrow. And of course, if for those of you who don't know heaven in a wheelbarrow, in a 1629 sermon preached by Theophilus Adams, he remarks that the oppressor must need to go to heaven, but it will be as the byword is in a wheelbarrow. The fiends and not the angels will take hold on him. So you know, going to heaven in a wheelbarrow is pretty much the same as going to hell. So while I may appear to be mixing my metaphors, it's sort of like mixing oil and vinegar. Well, that's actually salad dressing. And that's okay because we want to have a little bit of fun along the way. I want to start off by saying, by the way, can people hear me? Good. I want to start off by saying that I do actually have a blog, and the name of my blog is the Many Hats of Jared Bendis. And I've noticed that for those of you who've been asking me, Jared, when are you going to have a blog? When do you have a blog? I never, ever posted it. I just don't, and there's some strange reason. I do actually post announcement type things, but I never find myself posting anything of any merit or value at it. And the reason is it turns out that I need an audience. I have a real problem just speaking to an empty room. And so what happens is that I need to make sure that there's a venue here. And I'd actually probably do a podcast if I knew that somebody was listening at a set time and a set place. But this whole asynchronous talking to a group thing doesn't work for me very well. So I sort of keep my opinions to myself, and then I let them all build up for one important moment. All right. Now, the one thing about my blog is when my students found out that the name of my blog was The Many Hats of Jared Bendis, they somehow thought it was going to be about my hat collection, which, believe it or not, I actually do own a hat collection, but alas, it is not about my hat collection. Really, what it's about is about many roles in my life. And I want to go over them real fast because I think we all have many different people that we're trying to be, especially when we're talking about this virtual and real communication. I'm an artist. I'm creative director of New Media. I'm an entrepreneur, and you are going to hear about some of the entrepreneurial side of me today, though none of this is a solicitation. I'm a multimedia instructor. Matter of fact, my students are getting to go to class late today because this is overlapping them, and one of them is actually in the room with me right now watching real time. I have an audience of one in real. I'm a PhD student in art history museum studies. I'm a virtual reality specialist. I'm a husband, and I'm a stepdad, and et cetera. It goes on and on. Well, I have these distinct roles. And I want you to ask yourself, what are your distinct roles? Who are the people that you are? And none of you can see my hand motions, and I just find that funny that I still move my hands. Along the way, since some of you have heard me speak before, I'm going to be talking about some projects that aren't my creative director of new media projects. They're more of me as an artist and an entrepreneur. So I do want to repeat that while some of these things are commercial, none of these are meant to be solicitations because, trust me, I'm not making any money. So I want to start off by talking about social networks as digital tattoos. For a few years ago, and do we got my slide? Nope. A few years ago, I worked at a tattoo shop. Spent about 3 years. A friend of mine owned a tattoo shop, and you learn a whole lot about people when you work at a tattoo shop. And the tattoo shop we were at was extremely busy. We had about a 3-week backlog. So when somebody walked in the door, they wouldn't get a tattoo; they'd get an appointment. And usually, they'd spend a little bit of time with me. And what we do is I'd spend time doing what is referred to as tattoo counseling, though that is me holding the tattoo gun. I've actually never given a tattoo in my life. And what the thing about the tattoo counseling is that I'd spend a lot of time asking people the following 3 questions. Do you really want that? Do you really want that there? And do you really want that there forever? And it's really important for people to realize that when you put something out there, it's out there. And of course now we're talking about scarring, putting something permanently on your body, but the internet's a pretty permanent place. And actually, you pretty much can't unsay things. I can really anger somebody. It's hard to really get something back once it's out there. And when I was talking to a friend of mine about this, we were talking about the difference between tattoos and scars. Now, we don't mean tattoos and scars versus scarification. I mean, do you know what the big difference between a tattoo and a scar is? Regret. And the thing about this is a friend of mine who actually has some scars on her wrist from a failed suicide attempt. I asked her about what it's like walking around with those once, and she said, you know what? We all have scars. Some of them are on the inside and some of them are on the outside. And we wear ourselves on our sleeves in some ways. And I think those that have thought about these issues more, who've lived longer with some of these things, think about it harder. And I want us all to think about it harder, because I think a lot of times when we're talking about the internet, we are talking about too much information. And I always like to give the self-Google example. We've all done the whole self-Google thing. And the first few years ago, I was trying to show a friend of mine self-Googling, and it's Professor Melvin Goldstein, who's a very famous professor on our campus. I Googled him, and we found all of the articles he'd ever written, but we also found something about a Tibetan Mastiff. And I said, oh, there must be another Melvin Goldstein. And he said, no, that would be me, because it turns out in the early 70s, he actually brought the first Tibetan Mastiff to the United States. And every Tibetan Mastiff club since then has a picture of his dog. That's not his dog, by the way. Has a picture of his dog. They tell the story of his dog. I said, my goodness, where's the dog now? And he goes, well, Dad, it's in the 70s. But the interesting thing is that it lingers for so long. And the length of time that things linger is something that I think even people like us, some of us who are in the know, forget just how scary some of these things can actually really be. I'm going to go through a little bit of back of what you can find about me if you dig, not just at Google. Google will give you a little bit. You have to really roll up your sleeves to find out about me. For years, this was me. If anybody asked what I look like, this is what I sent. I was the bunny guy. Matter of fact, if I'd meet people after they met me on the internet, they go, "Oh my God, I've seen you before." This picture of me and the Easter Bunny is legendary. But if you actually looked around, you'd actually find that in 1992, I dated a girl and we posted our love letters on Alt Romance. And if you think about that, 1992 predates the web, which means postings that I placed on Usenet, which still exist in an archive somewhere, are still available. And if you really are sad, you can look them up. They're not pleasant. I'm not proud of them, but they're out there. And because they're out there, I have to sort of wear them proudly on my sleeve and decide what I want to do about this. I'm also bipolar. And some people were always like, oh, you shouldn't tell people that. Well, I've always been upfront about it. It's been in many profiles of mine. And years ago, I posted an article on the Bipolar Planet. It will always be there. Bipolar Planet's been up since the early days of the net. So in the end, you can find out a lot about me. What else can you find out about me? You can find out that I once sent a fan letter into the band Muda Faruqa. They posted that online, by the way. Muda Faruqa is an amazing band, and I highly recommend you guys go out and listen to that. You'd also find out that I have a preference for large women. For some of you, you're going to go, I didn't need to know that. Well, the too much information is part of life. It's out there, and we're going to get back to this a little bit later. But it's not just too much information. It's too fast information. When we start talking about too fast information is about getting everything at once. When you get everything at once, you're not getting the right picture. It's sort of like having a dossier on me, and you don't need a dossier on me. There's no evolution. There's no way of building it all. And I'm sorry about the slides not coming in fast enough. Apologize for that. And the idea about this is that the more we put out information about ourselves, what ends up happening is almost like we're hitting the point we're going to be in a telepathic society. What would it be like if we all could read each other's minds? And the answer would be pretty much like it is now. We're not giving each other a break. We listen, we see everything, we interpret it as much as what we want, and as we go through it, it becomes very difficult. A couple years ago, the university gave us all a skill set inventory. What they asked us to do was list out everything that we knew how to do. Not just for our job, but anything that the university did that we knew how to do. And a couple of us knew quite a bit of things that we knew how to do. For instance, I've wired in-wall networking. I've wired telephone networks. I've installed quite a bit of things in my life before. And what they were shocked at was that when they said, we didn't want to know that. But you asked us that. They said, well, now we're going to look at you differently. If you go through my bio, the bio that isn't in my Vita, you find out that I used to work with a florist, and I actually know how to prep roses. I actually went to umpire school. There's quite a bit of information about me. There's quite a different type of thing that you can do that will sort of make people look at you differently. And as you look at things differently, I'm going to encourage you to look at this. Right now, there's a big debate going on as to whether the Monkees should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, for those of you that think the Monkees should not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I'll respect your opinion. But in terms of the Monkees making it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or not, there are people that are like, oh, no, they're big fake, they're whatever. And that's a lot of legacy stuff because the first thing people do is they compare them to the Beatles. And, of course, when they compare the Monkees to the Beatles, and I'm getting somewhere here, folks. Don't worry about this. When you compare the Monkees to the Beatles, you're saying, well, these people were created, these people are artificial, and these people were real. But as we've gotten older, how artificial are the Beatles versus the Monkees? And is it even a fair comparison? And if I'm going to push it one step further, instead of comparing the Monkees to the Beatles, what would happen if we compared the Monkees to, let's say, the Temptations? If you look at it from this point of view, the Temptations was a group of talented people assembled by a machine that handed them hits, produced them very well, and put them out there. And we don't talk about Motown in a derogatory sense. We talk about Motown as it was amazing. The problem is what the machine was, and the machine was television. And the medium changed how we felt about it. So when we look at how television is a derogatory sense, but Motown, which is a wonderful production company, in a positive sense, why shouldn't the Monkees, who've had just as many hits and just as much fame, who actually did accomplish something, be there? So now I want you to sort of take a look at these various things as we go along, because it really is about the change of that communication. And as we're changing this communication, we're hitting the end of mythology. And the end of mythology really bothers me because I love Snopes. Don't get me wrong. Every time somebody sends me an email and they give me some horrible story in it, I'm the first to say, by the way, that's an urban legend. Please, that's not real. At the same time, everything gets qualified instantly. Is it truth? Is it fiction? Is it truth? Is it fiction? And if we're so fast to jump on whether something's true or not, what ends up happening is that we don't actually let things grow. We don't actually get to feel about them. We just get to say, that's true, that's not true. What about a good story? And then you find a good story, well, it's a fake story. But so the idea is even when something is a fiction, it's truth that it's a fiction. And so the idea of nothing growing and everything moving so quickly. And as for a good story, I was talking with a professor the other day about Polaroid pictures. And he said it's amazing. He goes that nobody really uses Polaroid cameras anymore. And I was talking about this. I said, what's interesting about Polaroid cameras is if you watch the way Polaroid cameras were used, digital cameras are used in almost the same exact way. It really has less to do with the picture as in the ability to snapshot the moment in time. It's that moment in time, I was there, now. But how many people actually save those Polaroids, or how many of you are actually printing your digital pictures? There's a massive amount of digital pictures that are never being printed. They're not worth it. They're just there. And the thing about capturing a moment in time I find interesting because I was talking to a friend of mine about how many shows that are on your DVR that you don't watch. And if you have a DVR at home, and it's filled with, like mine is, we've got like 80 hours on the DVR. And my wife said, how are we going to clear off the DVR? And I said, well, we've got an entire season of 24. We should just delete it and then rent it. But the idea is that we captured it so we wouldn't miss it. And the same thing about this is it's mostly about having this idea of coming through and capturing it for yourself. Now, interestingly enough, as we go through this, I'm finding that there's the sense of ephemera versus digital, and I'm really, really pleased about getting out of the computer, going outside of the computer, because I like companies like Lulu.com or companies like CafePress.com, which will make my virtual things real. I like the fact that I can take a company like this and say, here's my digital print, send me a framed, here's my digital photo, send me a framed print, send me a mug, send me a book. And what I'm finding fascinating about this is that the people who are actually building these things, who are actually going out and producing and making these things, in 10 years from now, when we are totally cluttered, when everything is lost, and when we're buried in our digital files, I almost think that this ephemera is actually going to be, I wouldn't say worthwhile, but it's going to be locatable, because I'm not going to be buried in it. Now, I want to quote, and it's a strange quote, I'm going to quote Barry Levinson, directed and wrote a movie called Man of the Year. I don't know how many of you have seen this, but there's a quote by Lewis Black in it, and I'm going to quote, "If everyone seems credible, then nothing seems credible. You know, TV puts everyone in those boxes side by side. On one side, there's this certifiable lunatic who says the Holocaust never happened, and next to him is this noted honored historian who knows all about the Holocaust. And now there they sit side by side, and they look like equals. Everything they say seems to be credible, and so as it goes on, nothing seems credible anymore. We just stopped listening." And I want to give you an example. One of my favorite examples, and it's this time of year that always pisses me off, is the star agencies. On the left side of the screen, which you can't see yet, is the website for the International Astronomical Union that was founded in 1919. These are the people who name stars. On the right side of the screen is the International Star Registry, which is not recognized by the scientific community, and has been naming stars since 1979. They include celebrities, dignitaries, and individuals worldwide. This is a very popular celebrity gift. They charge quite a bit of money for it. And they're a complete fraud. Not only are they a complete fraud, it says so on the bottom of their page. It says, this is not recognized by the scientific community. And yet people spend money every holiday season, and they've got a beautiful looking website. And I encourage you to take a look at it. And this is where I started wondering, like, what else could we do? How else could we look at these things? So a few years ago, I started the Intergalactic Planet Registry. The Intergalactic Planet Registry renames the planets you know for the people you know, because why name a distant star after somebody when I'll name, let's say, Mars after you? So now I'm not soliciting thing. Don't actually go out and buy anything. But the idea is, if you wanted to, for $9.95 plus $4.95 shipping and handling, because really, isn't that just what you wanted? You didn't really want something to happen. You wanted a certificate. You wanted a conversation point. You wanted an experience. Yes, and I'll even sell the asteroid belt and the moon, and though they're not really planets, but what the hell? And you know what? When they turned Pluto into a planetoid, I still kept it on there because that was important. And when I was thinking about all these fraudulent websites out there and how I might be able to make some money off them, I said, what other websites could I build? So to round out the suite, we have the Intergalactic Real Estate, because why not just rename a planet? I'll sell you the whole damn thing. I Should Be King. I'll make you any royal tale you want. You could be king of Second Life, king of the New Media Consortium, though I think Larry's got that one reserved. You could be the Reincarnated Registry. And then, of course, my favorite, which is fakegenealogy.com, where everyone's related. Now, these are just jokes. Now, don't get me wrong, you actually can go out and purchase on these sites, but they really are just meant to be humorous. Nothing on these sites is anywhere guaranteed to be fraudulent in any way whatsoever. And then this happened. Then, on genealogyzone.blogspot.com, they wrote a couple of months ago, do you have any famous relatives? Do you want some? This is how a new site, Fake Genealogy, presents itself to new users. The internet is known for being a fertile ground for con artists and crooks, but the new phenomenon of fake lineages is risking more than just your money. It's risking our past and our future. I was actually accused of being a fraud on a site that's written all over it that it's not fraudulent, that it's a joke. I'm not actually putting out a real database. I'm selling funny certificates. And better yet, by the way, the reason I'm mentioning this is because of Google Alerts. Now, we've all done the self-Google thing, but how many of you actually use Google Alerts? Google Alerts, for those who aren't aware, are ways of setting up with Google queries that are emailed to you every time they show up. So every time Jared Bendis is mentioned on the web, or any of my crazy websites, as you'll hear, show up on the web, I am notified, and then I can, of course, respond. Of course, somebody else had already responded. They said, didn't you realize the name of his company is sillyservices.com? How in the hell could you think that he's actually trying to fake genealogies? But that's not the point. And by the way, the fact that the person didn't actually look at it really goes to tell you just how crazy everything is. Now, as we go through this, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was talking to my boss, and I said to him, I said, you know, I want to start a cult. And he said, you want to start a cult? What do you actually believe in? Which is, by the way, just a reflection on my boss, how cool he actually is, that when I say I want to start a cult, he's actually trying to make sure that I fabricate it properly. And he said, well, what do you believe in? And I said, that's a really good question. You know what I really believe in? I believe in customer service. So I'm forming the cult of Newithagy. Newithagy is the cult of customer service. And what we're going to do is we're going to take back customer service by force if necessary. We want people to be nice again. And I think this is a very important thing. Now, as I was telling him about this, now, by the way, there is actually, if you go to newithagy.com, there's nothing there yet. But as I was telling him about this, he said, well, what are you going to do in the meantime? I said, well, we need to give people a place to be able to share the sort of bad things that have happened to them, to sort of, form a united front of good customer service. And he said, okay, that works. He goes, but what are you going to do with them? I said, well, if we do it properly, I can collect all the stories and publish them and have a nice little book there. And he said, that's disgusting. What are you going to call the website? TheyStoleMyDignity.com? So, TheyStoleMyDignity.com was opened last week, and the basic premise of TheyStoleMyDignity.com is that you can go there and post your awful, horrible, atrocious stories of those things that people have just done to you. It's a blog. There's no way to deny it. The technology is a blog. But as you're looking at it, I want you to remember that it's a blog in a different sort of fashion. I'm encouraging you to post, but I'm actually going to authorize everything. We're going to make sure that it's crafted, because one of the things that I think is the biggest problem with Web 2.0 is that everything's out there. It's all just random. And I have to think to myself, I don't just spew to my friends, even though they would maybe disagree a little bit. I do actually think before I speak, and I should think before I publish as well. And so there has to be some level of moderation, and if self-moderation isn't going to cut it, then sort of uber-moderation will as well. And as we were developing TheyStoleMyDignity.com, we were trying to think of the other important things that I think we need to rail against, and that's lies. So with that, we actually started SmokingCuresCancer.com. And SmokingCuresCancer.com is a place for people to post lies that they've been told, lies that they've heard. For to put it out there. Not Snopes. I'm not interested in urban legends. I'm interested in good old-fashioned lies. But continuing with this, I think what we're really running into is a sense of dehumanization. And with this dehumanization, it really is about the fact that machines call my house every morning. At 9 o'clock every morning, I get a phone call, an automated voice asking to speak to me. Please hold. And if I stay on the phone long enough, it will actually transfer me to somebody's answering machine. I'm actually having answering machines calling my house, trying to talk to me. And that's wrong. Where's the real person? When did it become acceptable to replace human interaction with this? More importantly, I'm really against traffic cameras, not because I speed and not because they're inaccurate. Mace Mensch is very upset. He thinks they're inaccurate. I'm like, no, Mace, it's not that they're inaccurate. He goes, they're fundraising. It's not that they're fundraising. It's that in the end, when you put up a traffic camera, you're basically expecting perfection out of me. You're expecting me to basically be judged against a machine. When you put me in, when you actually run me up against a machine, you're saying, I expect that to be the level of perfection that you desire to achieve. I don't desire to achieve that level of perfection. I'm going to break laws all the time. I'm going to go over the speed limit because you know what? Eventually they're going to put ticket machines in the car. The moment I hit 36 miles an hour, bam, a ticket comes out of the car. I don't like that. But you know what? The dehumanization goes beyond just this type of technology. Let's talk about the social networks that we're all a part of. MySpace, Facebook, things like that. How many of them will spam for you? How many of them? Someone's phone's ringing. How many of these people will offer to scan your address book for you, to email on your behalf? I mean, they'll email on your behalf. It's wrong. They shouldn't email on your behalf. I shouldn't be able to send an email through MySpace or even through Facebook. If I want you to join Facebook, I should basically call you myself. But it doesn't work that way. What ends up happening is that they're actually allowing... I'm going to mute that person.
No. I'm in a conference for 3 days.
Can everyone hear me?
No, not 24 hours straight.
I lost my microphone. Can anybody hear me? All
Yes,
right,
you're
good.
fine.
Thank you.
We hear you.
Thank you very much. No, so the idea is, why do these MySpaces and Friendsters and all these places, why are they so willing to spam on your behalf? And basically, the reason is because they really are interested in building a machine. Don't forget it's a machine, because in the end, they want you to have giant networks. And I won't do that on any of the sites that I build unless you ask me to email you. I'm not emailing you. You want me to email your friends? I won't. You have to email your friends. And you know what? That'll lower the numbers, but I don't care. Because what's more important is that I stay true to all this. Because in the end, technology is corrupting people. How many of you get really anxious when you're at the ATM? I mean, really anxious when you're at the ATM. I mean, because when I'm sitting there and you're waiting in line and you're drumming your fingers, I mean, what's happened to us? We used to have to wait in line to get money out of the bank. And I have a friend who's wearing one of those little Bluetooth headsets. He is 24 hours a day answering the phone. I called him the other day. He goes, I'm in the movie. I'll call you back. Why the hell did you answer the phone? I'm in the movie. I don't answer the phone. I figured they'll call me back. And so these issues are really about sort of letting go. I think we need to walk away a little bit from some of these things. I also want to talk about my DVR. I think my DVR is hurting me really, really bad. I was listening to the radio the other day, and they said something, and I twitched because I didn't hear it. And I twitched for the remote, and my DVR is making me pay less attention. My reliance on technology is making me less observant, because it sort of becomes a sort of a casual filtering mechanism, and it kind of scares me. Now, last summer I was working on a piece with a friend of mine. We were actually going to do an art and technology piece. As we were trying to put together what the art and technology piece should be, we said, what do people want to see? And we actually set up basically a piece called Found in a Crowd, which is available at foundinacrowd.com. You can view it, but if you're on Internet Explorer, it doesn't work very well. It works better on Firefox. And the idea is we set up a photo booth, and people could take their photos, put it into this giant display of photos, and as they went through this 3-day conference, this 3-day festival, they would look for themselves and see everyone that was there at the festival. And it grew over time, and we had 1,500 people go through this booth, and we have a nice collection of photos. You can go through and take a look at them. And as they would look for themselves, because that's really what they were looking for, they would see other people. And I think that becomes an issue when we start looking at these things. We're looking at ourselves, but at the same time, we're discovering other things that we may not be looking for. And that's an art is experience thing. Now, foundinacrowd.com was a one-shot. Foundinthecrowd.com, I invite you all to join right now. Foundinthecrowd.com is basically a one-dimensional social network. Basically, we're all connected because we're on the internet. All it does is collect your URL and your face. You post a picture, you post your link, and it shows a random array of whoever is in the crowd. Because that's it. We're just one big crowd of people. Some of these social networks aren't really real. And if you go there right now, you can join. Right now, I'm the only one in the network. You're the first people I've told about it. Doesn't cost. It's all free. It's all free. But what we're getting to is the idea of digital hoarding. And digital hoarding drives me crazy. How many of you have 7,000 songs on your iPods? Collect movies that you never watch? I've got 1,000 movies at home, videotapes, DVDs, hundreds of cassettes, 17,000 songs. You know what the funny part is I don't even listen to my iPod anymore, because what I've laughed, what I've thought about is that I don't listen because it's not really the experience. What I want is that randomness. I want to listen to the radio and hear a song that I wasn't expecting to hear. And what we're doing with these lists is we're doing friendship hoarding now. And with friendship hoarding, we're trying to create bigger and bigger groups of friends. And I keep thinking about bowerbirds and pack rats. Why are we doing this? Why are we collecting everything now? Bowerbirds collect to show off to their friends. I mean, obviously, I've got 17,000 songs, it makes me pretty cool. Bowerbirds are trying to attract a mate. Pack rats, we do get to this point where we are looking at some sort of obsessive behaviors here. And as we're getting to these obsessive behaviors, you have to ask yourself, what is it about? I think we're trying to build a virtual utopia. I think we're trying to build the perfect list or the perfect space, the perfect group of friends in the perfect virtual world. But what I want to point out is that hoarding is about isolation. It's about being alone. It's about all for me. And you think, well, what does it hurt to digitally hoard? So what? I've got 17,000 songs. It's not like I'm having it so somebody else isn't. But what we forget when we build this virtual utopia is that it takes more than that. It isn't what you craft. It's what comes into your life randomly in some ways. And this has gotten so crazy. I actually ran across a site called Yui.com. Any of you members of Yui? Yui.com is great. I'm not quite sure if it's a social network or a pyramid scheme. The whole point of Yui is it's ad revenue based. The more people that visit your site, the more money you make. The more people you recruit, the more money you make. But it becomes a matter of you're surfing around. You're surfing around because you want to make money. You're surfing around because you want to get a bigger network, but you're not really doing anything other than collecting. And I think when you look at some of these things like Yui, which is horrible and just a pyramid scheme, it really does reveal that a lot of these things are just that. It's just about gimme, gimme, gimme. I think there's too much in MySpace. I've been waiting to say that, by the way, for 20 minutes. Now, I'm not anti-money. I'm not anti-money at all. Matter of fact, if I quote Edgar Rice Burroughs, I write to escape poverty. Now, at the same time, I want to talk to you about going back a little bit to a website that I started in 1997. In 1997, I started a website called SuperDate. It was a personal ad website. It was free. It was using it wasn't even using a script. I hand coded it. It didn't have a domain name. It was just a little thing on AOL. And basically, it was for large-sized women and their admirers. And I hand coded it. And the reason I hand coded it was I put my ad up first. And that was the trick. I just wanted a place to meet people. And so I built it myself. And then when I found that I wasn't single anymore, I kept it running. And I would always keep it running. And every few years, I would keep it going and keep it going. And then a friend of mine showed me Google Ads and said, if you put ads on the site, you can make a little bit of money. Because I've never made any money. I've never charged anybody. And I said, okay, that'll be interesting. Let me try it. So I put some ads on the site, and I put Google Analytics. How many of you use Google Analytics on your websites? I am actually going to look to see if people respond. Google Analytics rocks, by the way. Yeah, I'm hearing clicking. Google Analytics is amazing. Now, between Google Analytics and Google Ads, I built a completely self-contained system with my recent single site, and I made it in a way that anybody can go to the site, anybody can read the site, but the only way you can actually get their emails is if you join the site, which is free. And this allows me to track to see what's going on. And what ends up happening is that I have 1,000 registered users who hit about 1,000 to 2,000 hits a day, about 250 people who've posted ads, and about half of those people have posted photographs. And with that, I make between $2 and $4 a day. Now, I'm not telling you this because I'm like, ooh, look at me, I'm making all this money. It's not all that kind of money. I've only made like $600 in the past couple of years. But the idea is that as you're watching this stuff, as you're looking at these websites, do you realize what else is going on behind the scenes? Do you realize that when you're looking at this, that what you consider casual conversation and casual communication can be something a lot more insidious, that there's a lot more going on? I'm very upfront about it all. I'm telling you, this is what I do. This is not Jared Bendis, the multimedia instructor speaking to you. This is Jared Bendis, the person who's an artist and who's doing some experiments. Some of these are experiments. I didn't expect some of these things to work. If they don't work, I move on. And some of these things pay for other things, which I like as well. But I love being able to look at the map overlay that if you can't see on the screen right now, there's a map of the last month of where people have logged in on my SuperDate site. And take a look at that. I mean, there's people in New Zealand, in Africa, in India, all over the world. Big fan of this. But as I keep building these other sites, I keep thinking about what other sites I can build. There's a site that is not ready yet. And if you're interested in knowing it when it goes live, you can email me, called lendme20.com. Because what I'm more interested in is not how many friends you have, but what they think of you. And this is a semi-anonymous site, and what it is, it's going to be a credit rating of sorts. It's a social network credit score. What I want to know is, would your friends lend you $20? Now, of course, when you invite them, you won't know what they've said about you. As a matter of fact, you won't even get your credit score until you've gotten at least 10 friends to join the site. The cool thing is that you can rate people that haven't joined the site. And when they join the site, they may find that there's 10 people who have already rated them. You can't delete your friends. You can't hide your friends. You can just change your friends. And so the thing about this is the idea is, what would that be if you really looked at it differently? What would it be like if all of your friends could anonymously rate you? And the best part is, if you want a better credit score, you got one of two things. You can have more friends add you, or you can make them better friends. And what's more important, better friends or more friends? This is coming soon, so if you're interested in knowing more about it, email me. These are all sites, by the way. Everything I'm showing you here is free. It's just all ad revenue based. And by the way, in answer to your question, all of my domain names come due in November, and it's really expensive. There is one last major site that I want to talk about, and this has been something that I've been working on for quite some time. Matter of fact, I hinted at it the last talk that I gave, and it's something that my wife does. She and her friends have this little game they play called Your Love Island. They always talk about their love islands. The basic premise is, if you're trapped on a desert island, which 10 celebrities would you bring? Hence the term Love Island. And what's interesting about this is it's not an infinite list. They're very specific about it. They only get 10 people. And because they only get 10 people to bring, they spend all their time crafting the list. I may hear from them middle of the week. You'll get a phone call and she'll go, so-and-so's off my island. So-and-so's on my island. And because they're spending all this time crafting their lists, they're actually refining how they think. It's not a hoarding, and I like not hoarding. So she said, could you make it electronic for me? And I said, sure. Let's make it a little bit bigger than this, though. Let's make different categories. So yourloveisland.com, which is an open beta right now, and you're welcome to try it out. But I'm assuming that you'll all drive me crazy. Nothing will happen until this weekend. Yourloveisland.com allows you to create a list of top 10 lists, but only top 10 lists. And the trick is, it's a social network of popular culture. And what I want to point out about this is that you are not the nodes on the network. The popular culture is. So let's say that me and my friend Al, who's sitting in the room with me, we're friends, we know each other, but let's say we both like Billy Joel music. Well, that's how we'd be connected in this network, because we're connected based on the popular culture nodes. And so the idea is you come up with your top 10 celebrities, top 10 fictional characters, TV shows, movies, games, CDs, books, and songs. We figured those are good lists because those are nice popular culture items. And you list them. And what we're building is a authenticated, growing database. I'll get back to why it's not a Facebook applet yet. And what ends up happening is you get a nice, clean list. And it's your list. And you can share it with whoever you want. And of course, I'll tell you, if you're interested, I'll tell you about the back end later. But the idea is that you can actually have a network of there. Now, people have asked me, what about a Facebook applet? Any of these things can be Facebook applets. Those are just various technologies. There's 100 different ways of doing this. I'm not doing the Facebook applet because, I'll be honest with you, as much as I love Facebook, I'm just surprised, not as students, but as teachers and university people, how many of us play that heavily in Facebook, because I was always told to be careful of shit where you eat. And Facebook seems a little too close to home for me. I like to keep my Facebook a little more professional and the rest of my world a little more personal. And I understand that everybody can see everything. I'm not knocking that. But I do want to make sure that I have to ask myself, what's my LinkedIn? What's my Facebook? My MySpace? Forget it. Don't even use that. And how do I deal with eclectic people? Oh, that would be great. You're actually going to add new things to the database. So, want to do a quick summary, because I know I only have a few minutes left. A couple of more things here. In conclusion, and then I will take questions or open up to more discussion. I've tried to avoid looking at the screen too badly. In conclusion, I want us to sort of reevaluate what it is that we're doing on these networks. I want us to look carefully at what it is. I want us to slow down. I think if we slow down, everything would be great. Slowing down is pivotal. I can't give everything to you at once. I can't take it all at once. I can't hear it all at once. I shouldn't be giving it all at once. think we need to collect less and sort more. And I think we need to turn it off. I think we need to turn off a lot of this stuff. I think we have to ask ourselves, why are we doing this, and not do it if we're not going to do it at all. And I have one more thing, and I don't know how many of you are Jewish out there, but for those of you that are Jewish, I want to wish you a happy Hanukkah and invite you to virtualmenorah.com. For those of you who don't know how to spell menorah, you're not Jewish. Virtualmenorah.com, and you can go and light the virtual menorah every night this week. It's another one of my crazy websites. So, with that being said, I think I've gone through most of my time. Anybody got any questions? All right. What was the holy cow to?
Jared, there's a question in chat here. What kinds of parameters do you as teachers have for Facebook when students friend?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, what I find interesting is I have the dubious distinction of being faculty, staff, and student. So I have the deans on my list, I have faculty on my list, I've got my students on my list, and I've got my classmates on my list. I will accept almost everybody on my Facebook because it becomes a political issue. I mean, that's why. I mean, I talked about this in my last talk. I mean, that's why they're really not social networks. Because I really won't walk up to somebody and go, "No, you're not my friends." Oh, I'm sorry. I'll put you on my B list. I can't even do my top friends on my Facebook app because I'm afraid of who I'm going to offend. So it's just kind of crazy when you start looking at these things. So you do have to ask yourself how serious you take it, but not just how serious you're taking it, but how serious someone else is taking it as well. Did that answer the question? All right. I'm sorry. I don't actually read the chat I try not to read the chat too much when I'm talking, just because I know you guys. So the question.
Most of the chat questions.
Okay. But are there any other chat questions that people would like? What does it mean to turn it off for you? You know what it means to turn it off for me? It means that when the phone rings, actually, I shouldn't say this because I'm actually on call until midnight because I'd rather my students ask me questions at night than wake up to problems in the morning. But it means that when I'm at home with my wife and she goes, "Do you know where your cell phone is?" I go, "I don't need to know where my cell phone is. You're here. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it." This is just, for me, giving a talk in Second Life is just about giving a talk. The only difference between this and a podcast is that I know you people are there, which is important for me because I don't speak to an empty room. And Al's sitting here like laughing because he's not the empty room. But I don't mean turn it off altogether. I'm not telling us to smash the machines. I'm just saying we need to remember that there is more to it in life. Yes, it's too binary. My phone message, by the way, I've got a new phone message at the office. I came up with this about 3 months ago. It's fantastic. If you call my office right now, it goes ring, 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 beep. I don't have a phone message at the office. I think we know what to do with the beep. I think you know what you're getting. And a lot of people love that. My phone rings, it goes beep, they leave a message, and they're done. If you call me at the house, you get the following. "Hello, you've reached Jared, Gus, and Jenny. If you'd like to reach us, call us on our cell phones." In parentheses, what we don't say is, if you don't have our cell phone numbers, we didn't want to talk to you. I'm sorry. Thank you, Larry. Basically, the big questions was, what does it mean to turn off when I'm giving a talk in Second Life? What does it mean to turn off for me? Were there any other questions, by the way, from the other venues, Larry, since I can't see them? And folks, you can steal whatever you want. That was a question was, can they steal some of these things? As for the links, I'll put them all up in my blog so everyone can see them all. And again, remember, it's all fun and games. I'm not getting rich off of this. So I just want you to basically take a look and see what we're doing. But please, the big one right now for me is virtualmenorah.com. Please pass that one to your friends. We only got 8 days to show it to people, and then I got to leave it dormant until next year. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Jared.